Ahoy everyone, Cat Goblin and Martin here, and boy you guys are in for a treat, because today is another challenge video. In the last challenge, I attempted to beat Sonic Heroes without touching a single ring, as all the teams, and the results were pretty bad. I collected 912 rings in total, which mostly came from pinball. And since a lot of you guys liked that video, I decided to do the Without a Ring challenge again, but in another Sonic game. Can you beat Sonic in the secret rings without touching rings? I mean, it has rings in the name, plus there's literally a few missions where you have to avoid rings. Surely we can avoid them all. And in the last challenge I kind of foreshadowed I'd be doing this one. Now, Secret Rings has some unique controls. It's an auto-runner game on the Wii. You tilt the Wii remote to move Sonic left and right. But you of course can't forget that you gotta shake the remote to do stuff. Oh, and if you're a pro gamer, then you hold the remote upright. These unique controls will be quite interesting, but nevertheless, let's get straight into it. The rules to this challenge are quite simple and easy to follow. I cannot collect a single ring. Okay, I know you can just get a ring, then get some random enemy or hazard to damage you, causing all the rings to fly out, and then complete the stage with 0 rings. But if I could do that, then that would mean that every single stage would be possible, so no rings at all. The ring counter must remain at 000 at all times. Certain checkpoints are allowed, which I'll get into later, and that's pretty much it. Well, we of course die in one hit now. The story starts with Sonic sleeping on his couch, when suddenly he hears a mysterious voice. I'll explain the story as accurately as possible. Alright, so this genie named Shara pops out and says that the Book of the Arabian Nights is in danger, and that the world needs a hero. We then become the ring bearer of the one ring to rule them all. Don't worry, we don't turn invisible or evil or anything. And we take this magic carpet and dive headfirst into the book. Just so you know, this ring doesn't count. Alright then, paragraph 1 of Lost Prologue, let's see what we got. Wow, definitely didn't see this one coming. The very first level of the game forces you to get 50 rings, and these boost pads here will send you back to collect them all. The challenge is basically over, but you know what? Let's see how many rings you need to beat the game, and which stages are actually possible ringless. Not much to say about the other paragraphs though, just dodge the rings placed in the center. But paragraph 6 forces us to get 25 rings while moving backwards, making 75 rings in Lost Prologue. We then get interrupted by Thanos, and he demands us to get the Infinity Stones. It's Erazor Djinn demanding for the 7 gold rings, which don't count as collecting a regular ring. Oh yeah, he also curses Sonic with the Flames of Disaster, so now Sonic has an Iblis inside of him, and it will kill him after a certain amount of time. Don't worry, he can cry all he wants, that's what the tissues are for. Sand Oasis is where the fun really begins. At the start, you'll see a trail of rings leading to the exit of the building, so do a high jump just before you turn and shake the remote to do an air dash to avoid the rings. The air dash is very reliable and will be useful. Be extra careful when coming down the slope. Jumps are required in this part, and I suggest that you don't run at full speed when doing this challenge. Dodging the rings here can be done, but alas, we have to go on these 2 springs which automatically sends us flying towards 6 rings each. The hallway with the fire isn't really tricky, as you can just jump over everything. The wall etching section is another impossible part, which will be a recurring problem. Sonic can't jump while sidestepping on ledges, nor can he hang down and move like in Assassin's Creed. This part alone contains 37 rings. After that you fall and automatically collect 6 more rings just before you're allowed to tilt and break. The cool thing about checkpoints is that when you die, the stage sort of just restarts, so the rings that you may have collected will go back again. When I died here, I spawned in after the fall, which gave me 1 more ring, so I wouldn't have to get all the other automatic rings. I'm not going to count these checkpoints because it seems like cheating, and if you were to play this part normally without dying, you wouldn't get 1 ring. The rest of the stage is pretty straightforward. We found King Shahryar and got 55 rings from the stage. Secret Rings also has missions in order to progress. Don't worry, the missions I played are the exact ones you have to do. Don't Get Defeated is actually pretty easy. There's just this one part where you have to immediately cancel your jump after going over the fire. And try not to die near the end. And don't break the jars, you can jump over all the rings and fire at the start. Make sure not to go on grind rails. Then when you take this ramp, always hold the 1 button so that you don't run into the trail of rings. This move will be useful in later levels. Lastly, breaking 5 jars is way too easy. You just have to be careful in the narrow hallway. All 3 of these missions can be done without touching rings. And I found Alibaba. Now let's move on to Dinosaur Jungle. One thing that you'll also notice in the game are these big silver star rings, which yes, they do become red star rings in the 2010s games. But anyways, these rings contain 20 rings each, so whatever you do, do not collect them. The first stage in Dinosaur Jungle starts off with these 3 Triceratops trying to charge you, and the chase can be done without rings. I got a ring by accident in my good clip, so I played the stage again in my later playthrough. The rings are very easy to dodge, and once you get to this downhill section, move left, and after you pass the rings, go right immediately so that you don't get hit by a rock.
3, 2, 1, go!
Whoa! Something's after us!
They're Triceratops!
What did I do?
Phew! I don't know. Just run!
I hope those guys don't stick their horns through me! They just don't give up!
Phew! If we can just get across the bridge up ahead, we should be okay.
The log part is extremely easy. Once you hop on, go left immediately to dodge the rings. Rings like these here can be jumped over, and then you'll come across this automatic vine part. After replaying it a few times, I find that you can just jump dash over the first set, so that you only have to get the last 5 rings. The second log section is also easy. Now in the T-Rex part, you have to jump over all these rings while avoiding being eaten. But then there's this part which I had a hard time with. No matter how many times I tried, I always got these 2 rings, and with that, I got 7 rings from the stage. Don't Get Defeated is doable ringless. Going on the log is still easy. If you're landing carefully in this part, you'll dodge the trail of rings, and then you just complete the mission. Defeating 10 enemies has 2 problems, first being the catapults. I was actually able to dodge the first catapult by jump dashing all the way to the next platform, but sadly you have to take the second one, granting you 5 rings. And that dumb automatic vine part is back, making the total 10 rings. For the rest of the mission, you have to carefully backstep past the rings when you hit the button, and avoid the long ring trail by the end. Stealth attack is pretty simple. You got this ring trail you jump over, then before the goal you have to carefully do a jump dash before the ledge in this tight cave. I then decided to smash 5 eggs. After smashing an egg, make sure you land in the center of the rings or do a mid-air dash. The only issue is this part where you jump into the pot, and that gave me 1 ring. But besides that, I acquired our first world ring, which is the green one. Oh, and saved King Sharyar too. Evil Foundry is next, and the main stage isn't too bad. However, there are 2 impossible parts. The ledge, which gives you 10 rings, and after you get launched here, you go on a dash pad which sends you towards a ring trail. Thankfully, I got 1 ring from that. Carefully jump over the rings on the slope stairs, never go on ground rails, and always dodge the rings placed in the center. Erazor Djinn summons in the Ifrit Golem, but we're not strong enough to fight it, so we have to cower away back to Sand Oasis and race the spirit ball, which can be done ringless. Alibaba tells us to find Sinbad, who's being held captive on the Manta Ray Armada known as Levitated Ruins, and so the challenge starts to get a lot harder. The start is actually fine, it's the next ruin that you hop on that poses a problem. This stage has this really annoying wind mechanic that blows you back. Normally you would just use your speed boost, but we have 5 rings in the way. This part was so annoying, and the least rings I was able to get was 4. You can jump over these sets of rings here. Defeating the gargoyles isn't difficult, and the wind is now less annoying. The new annoying thing are these paths that the gargoyles generate. On the green path, do not use the dash pad, instead jump over it and hug the sides dodging the rings. Now for these sets of rings, hug the left side, then the right, and finally go on the left again so that you only get 1 ring instead of 2. Keep in mind you can't jump in this section, and there are 2 automatic loops that have 3 rings each. On most of the paths, you just have to carefully jump over rings and hug the sides. The zipline part can be done ringless. You'll want to hug the left side and do a speed boost when you go down this part, and then for the end, avoid grinding on rails. Defeat 1 enemy is a super easy mission, and now we have to open Sinbad's cage. The first zipline is the only challenging one due to the rings near the end. The least rings I was able to get was 2. The first tower has an automatic dash pad section that makes you run into 6 rings. A bounce cushion forces you to get a ring in the second tower. third tower is possible ringless, but the fourth one gives you one more ring, which is landing on top of one after getting launched, and you can dodge the ring by the catapults. You have to be extremely careful around the rings before reaching the zip lines, and Tower 4's zip line has missiles that will kill you, so whatever rings you're forced to collect, make sure you still have them so they can damage boost, then try to pass through the rings. And the Don't Get Defeated mission is super easy, as it doesn't contain a lot of rings. After saving Sinbad, we head on to Pirate Storm, and the start is actually pretty straightforward. The platforms are wide and the rings are pretty spaced out. Even the part where you ride on a cannon bullet is easy. There's this catapult that you use to reach the next ship, which does send you towards rings, but if you lightly swing the remote and have the catapult like this, then you won't land on them. When you get launched to the coral area, you have to take this dash pad which automatically gets you rings. I was actually able to get 8 rings. In sections like these, the braking doesn't work until the automatic part is done, and when climbing on the steep hill, you're forced to get a single ring from the bounce cushion. After all those parts, you have to go surfing, which isn't bad at first. Just make sure to go all the way on the right side after hitting the second wave, but the end has the zigzag row of rings. I used a time break to try to slip past the rings. I sadly got 1 ring every time, and the ending bit isn't too difficult. Don't Get Defeated, Don't Defeat Enemies, and Defeat 20 Enemies are very easy missions that are possible. You can jump over all the rings, and there's enough room in the platforms to land on without collecting a single ring. We now have our first boss of the game, Captain Behemoth, who's actually pretty easy to defeat. The rings on the path pose little difficulty, as you can just jump over or go around them. You have to be careful when boosting into the boss that you don't run into the rings, and be careful around a few of the dash ramps. What makes the captain stupid easy to defeat is that if you jump while he does the final wave blast, you can immediately do a homing attack to rip off his horns, and every time you jump off of him, he'll do the wave blast again, so just keep on doing a homing attack and he'll be gone before you know it. With the water ring from the captain, we return back to Evil Foundry to face the Ifrit Golem. Don't Get Defeated is another easy mission due to the fact that it doesn't contain a lot of rings. The Golem is by far the hardest and most annoying boss to beat without collecting a ring. I'd say that's even harder than the 2 final bosses. The rings placed around the stage can easily be avoided, but from time to time the rings of pearls will switch places, so that's something to also keep an eye on. The Golem's bomb drops are unpredictable every time. You have to wait for a bomb to fully explode, because if you just run, you'll die. And if you die at any time during the fight, you have to restart over again. At this point in the game, I decided to use the ring upgrades. Some of them are fine to use, such as the good braking and long-range homing attack, but I'm not going to use the upgrade that gives you rings because then it wouldn't be much of a challenge. I found that the best strategy to defeating the Golem is by running all the way to his left hand twice, because his left hand will drop like 1 or 2 bombs, and you can easily destroy its knuckles. Also, the boss can destroy his own knuckles with his own bombs, so that's also funny. If you want the fight to end sooner, shake the remote as fast as you can when doing a homing attack so you can get 3 hits in on its weak points. The boss only takes 9 hits to defeat, but during my playthrough I actually missed the final hit, so I had to dodge all the lava and bombs, and waited for the rings that were in my way to turn into pearls. This boss took me hours to beat ringless. Clearly you're supposed to get rings in the fight, but nevertheless it's possible to beat with just 0 rings. Time to escape the place, and I thought this mission would be impossible because of the ledge section and this part here, but I found that you can just go on the grind rails. And then at this part, the rings are spaced out, making it so that you can squeeze past them. At the beginning part, don't jump or grind, and when you make it to the top of the slope, just walk through the spike when it goes down so that you don't land on the rail with the rings. The Red World Ring has been acquired, so onto the Skeleton Dome. There's not much to say about the first stage, as rings are easy to dodge. There's this one part where after when you defeat the Fire Djinn, immediately do a mid-air dash to avoid these rings. But then there's this ledge section. I figured that it must be possible to jump over the rings, and lo and behold, you actually can. The timing has to be precise, because Sonic's mid-air dash gives him a bit of height. So just before you're about to land on the ring, do a dash and you'll go over them, and avoid the spike ball. Despite all that effort though, there's literally 3 rings you're forced to get, and the rest of the stage is fine as long as you don't grind on the rails. Oh, and by the end you can just use your speed boost to plow through the enemies to reach King Solomon. King Solomon's first task is to defeat the 40 thieves, which are skeleton and green djinns. The mission is possible, but you have to be extremely careful because if you die, you have to restart all over again. To reach this launch hoop, you can just jump underneath it, and thankfully there's more than 40 enemies in the stage. Defeating them gave us the White World Ring, and now we have to get the King's Bones, which can be done quickly. But the only problem is that the same ledge section from earlier is back, granting us 3 rings again, and this flying pot doesn't even go anywhere. Next would be defeating 15 enemies, which is possible if you hit all the pressure plates in the first few rooms. So in the first room, I would back up and go to the other side to hit the pressure plates so that another Djinn spawns in. This way you would have defeated 14 enemies, and then you just defeat the last Djinn on the ground rail part, which instantly ends the mission. Finally, we've made it to the Night Palace. Make sure to jump before you turn around the corners to dodge the rings. As soon as you hop on the magic carpet, tilt the remote all the way to the right, and dodging all the rings on it is easy. This stage has 3 problems, which are the rooms with the poison gas. Normally the gas would drain your rings, but with no rings on, it will instantly kill you. I couldn't find a way around it, so I was forced to get this big silver ring, giving me 20 rings. I found that you can pass the gas room with just the 20 rings you collected, if you do a speed boost midway, and because there's 3 of these rooms, I got 60 rings in total. The digital dimension sections aren't too bad either, and after completing the stage, we come face to face with the Erazor Djinn. But wait, before we fight him, let's finish Night Palace and get the rest of the world rings. Beating the spirit ball in a race is possible as the rings are located at the start, and you have to do a jump when you get around the first corner. Don't get defeated is kinda fine. The second digital dimension section has this automatic loop which makes you run into at least 1 ring. Then just before the goal, you have to be so careful when using the winged pot to hover. Finishing with 0 rings is right up my alley and is possible. For most of the level, you just maneuver around the rings by walking under or jumping over them. Lastly, you can defeat all 20 enemies without ever collecting rings, and we've acquired the Purple World Ring. To get the Blue World Ring, I had to defeat 20 enemies in Levitated Ruins. This stage has a lot of impossible parts, but what if I told you there's a way to cheat the system? The first part is normal, defeat a few enemies, jump over rings, and use these guys as stepping stones. When you reach the top of the tower where the spike boulders are, you can see that the 2 djinns you used as stepping stones respawned, and this gave me an idea. If I go back and defeat them, will it count? And yes, it actually counts. This trick works well when you have the backstep upgrade equipped. Every time you go back, just remember to be careful around the rings, and before you know it, the mission is already finished. Going back to Sand Oasis, we have to get the last world ring, that being the yellow one, but there's just one small problem. In order to progress, I have to do the mission called Collect 99 Rings. So I collected the rings and was able to progress. Beating the clock is very simple because we played this part before. Jump over rings, hold the 1 button here, and don't grind at the end. I almost forgot to mention that Sand Oasis has another don't get defeated mission that you have to do. So these rings here are a problem, so to get past them you'll want to take this right dash ramp. As soon as you land on the dash pad, immediately do a back step 3 times. Then when you get to the middle, you just jump over the rings, and the rest of the mission is fine. Now we get to fight the Sand Scorpion, who is pretty much a complete joke compared to the other bosses, and the rings won't get in your way. So now that we have all the 7 world rings, let's go defeat Erazor Djinn. During the fight there's a ring tower in the center of the path, and avoiding it is pretty easy. It took me a few tries to defeat Erazor ringless, but if you take every opportunity you get in doing a homing attack, then the fight shouldn't take you very long. Once defeated, Erazor will fly through this door which can be unlocked with the 7 world rings. Unfortunately, Erazor takes the rings, kills Shar, and transforms into Elf Layla wa-Layla. By using the red, purple, and green world rings, we turn into Darkspine Sonic, and the true final fight begins. The rings can easily be avoided as they only hover around the sides. The fight didn't take me very long. Do a speed boost when he throws energy orbs, dodge his slashes, deflect his huge energy orb, and punch his weak spots. When you feel your soul gauge to the max and shake the Wii remote quickly, you'll do so much damage. I only had to get him twice. The final boss was much easier than the Golem, that's for sure, but nevertheless, I beated the game. Erazor Djinn is back in his lamp, Shar is alive, and the stories of the Arabian Nights have been restored. Counting up all the rings I got in each zone, I collected 75 in Lost Prologue, 154 in Sand Oasis, 18 in Dinosaur Jungle, 11 at Evil Foundry, 21 in Levitated Ruins, 10 in Pirate Storm, 6 in the Skeleton Dome, and 61 in Night Palace. After adding up all the rings, I collected 356 rings in total during my playthrough, which is quite a lot. What really hurt this challenge are the 3 missions that the goal is to collect the number of rings. This kind of mission really hurt Team Chaotix in my Sonic Heroes Ringless challenge, and if they didn't have that goal, they would only have to collect 22 rings. The ledges and automatic sections were also a problem, which is why I got so many rings in Sand Oasis. The gas room in Night Palace was also a pain, and just as a joke, I could add up the ring you wear and the world rings, which would make the total 364. So yeah, the ring of power dominates this game as well. 356 is the number that I got, but it might be possible to get a lower number. Like in the surfing and zipline part, you must be able to squeeze past through the rings. Or for the other parts, there could be some sort of glitch or something. Oh, and also, I'll post a separate video which shows me defeating all the bosses in the game without getting rings. Anywho, I hope you guys enjoyed today's challenge video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.